Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Dungeons & Dragons Worlds and Realms book. So this is something that I was completely unaware that it existed until I was at Rainbow's End in Wolfville with my wife, and she saw that I was interested in it, so she ended up picking this up for me as sort of like an early gift or Christmas present, or whatever you want to call it. But this is a really, really cool book here. It's, like I said, it's not an RPG book. It's more of kind of like a history of, and just sort of going through and, or maybe not even history of, but just sort of introducing concepts here. And the other book in this series that I have is the Lore and Legends book. And I think there was one called Art and Arcana. That was the first one. I don't have that book, but I do have the Lore and Legends book because my sister got me that last year for Christmas, I think it was. So really, really cool stuff here. Yeah, this was actually the winner of a poll that I put up when I first started to get back into the swing of making videos after taking a couple of weeks off for the holidays and stuff. And this is the one that ended up winning the poll there. So this is something that I'm kind of looking forward to discussing. I've had this book for a little while, so I'm kind of glad that I didn't do a video right away, because I can do one now based off of what people seem to be interested in. So let's just go ahead and take a look here. I am positioned awkwardly around my tripod, so I'm going to try not to hit anything, but... all right, so on the back here, we got a couple of quotes from Matt Mercer and Will Wheaton. So the Matt Mercer quote says, "This incredible journey through the fantastical realms that inspired countless tables to roll dice together is both an educational and visual treat. A wonderful collection that marries the history of the game with in-world stories and gorgeous art to present a unique and wondrous new way to engage or re-engage these worlds I thoroughly enjoyed." And that was a Matt Mercer quote. Will Wheaton, Worlds and Realms is a masterwork of in-universe storytelling and organic world building that narratively unifies the D&D multiverse for the first time in its history. I kind of feel like in 4E they unified a lot of stuff with the Astral Sea, but anyway, we'll not worry about that right now. It is for everyone who skips the stats and tables to devour the narrative details of the campaign setting and legendary heroes who define them, which, to be fair, definitely sounds like his thing there, because I've been recently rewatching a lot of the tabletop stuff, and yeah, he really does seem like the type that's like story first and other stuff's kind of secondary. So yeah, when I first got this here, I was kind of expecting it to be basically things like Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk, Dragonlance, Eberron, and I was kind of expecting that to really be basically it. I mean, they might have had some of the Critical Role stuff in there as well, like the Wild Mount or something along those lines, maybe some stuff with Sigil and Planescape. But there's something in here that I really wasn't expecting, and I got super excited when I saw it there, and it makes me hopeful that, maybe it'll actually return. Of course, we do have some really cool, that's the expert rules artwork from the Moldvay Cook expert rules from the I think the early 80s there. We have a gibbering mouther there. I've been told that I say it weird because I pronounce it with the G instead of like a J sound. It's just, to me, that's the way that I see it, and that's the way that my brain processes it, kind of the same way that I call it a GIF. So yeah, the gibbering mouther is what I'm going to call it there. We got Mordenkainen, so some cool stuff there. And this is actually a little introduction that is from the perspective of Mordenkainen. Again, I'm not going to read everything here, or really read through too much. We just want to take a look here. We do have the elemental planes. So this is, I guess, I think this is like the 5e version, because in the 4th edition, you had the Astral Sea, the elemental chaos, which is kind of like, I don't want to say it was heaven and hell, but it was kind of like that. The Astral Sea also had like the other material worlds in there as well. But you do have the material plane. You do have the Feywild and the Shadowfell, which are kind of like these, reflections of the material world. And two of my favorite things that were introduced or sort of changed and updated with the 4E. Like, I like the Shadowfell way more than the Plane of Shadow. You also have the Plane of Water there. So you got the Sea of Worlds, which does have the Isle of Dread, which is really cool because the Isle of Dread has become something that exists sort of in its own, almost like demi-plane that can cross over with all different campaign settings. So it's not just part of the known world anymore. It was shifted into Greyhawk for 3rd edition with the Savage Tide campaign and Dungeon Magazine. It then appeared in the world of Narath, or whatever the world's name was. I know Narath was like the Human Empire. But it was there because you had it referenced in some of the adventures, I think, there as well. So really, really cool stuff to see that in there. So we got the Isle of Dread, which is always great. And let's move on here. And we got the looks kind of like the Great Wheel type of stuff. The Astral Dreadnought, which is always a cool looking creature there. So we got part 1, the Material Plane. So we got Greyhawk, but that is an awesome looking beholder. I love it. And you can see like the lightning bolt is hitting the anti-magic, but what's cool about it is like the anti-magic creates like a bubble around it. And I recently did a video on like the 4E monster manuals, and I can't remember if I went into detail on the beholder or not, but in the 4E monster manual, the beholder's central eye was no longer anti-magic. I think I did. I remember saying this out loud. But instead, it was able to stun a single target, right? So they could look at somebody, stun them, and then fire their eye rays off. And I kind of like that better than the anti-magic cone, because if the party doesn't spread out around the beholder, then it has to choose between, having the ability to attack them back with anything other than its bite, or be able to fire its eye rays at it. So, if the thing creates like a protective shield around the face of the beholder, I think that's really cool. And it was also weird to have something like that, like the anti-magic cone, in a version of the D&D game, like with 3rd edition, when the beholder was updated for that. To have that in a system where facing doesn't actually matter for anything else, it was just kind of weird. But anyway, we got these heroes there from Greyhawk. So again, some really cool looking artwork here. We've got some information on it. We got the White Plume Mountain, which has the note about Dragotha, and sort of the updated version. I think, this might be from the 5e Tales from the Yawning Portal, actually, come to think of it. I don't know if that's from that or from the 2nd edition White Plume Mountain, like the Return to, for the 25th anniversary series. But again, we got some old school artwork here, which just looks awesome. It's really cool to see mixed in with, we've got the modern version of Vecna there. The only thing I don't like about the modern version of Vecna is like he's got his hand and his eye there intact. Now, in the Eve of Ruin cover, Vecna has sort of like a spectral version of his hand and eye, but I think that's kind of missing there. So anyway, there's the old school Vecna, though, and there's his hand and eye and hand and eye and hand. No eye, though, but his hand, and then some the Book of Vile Darkness, which I think, at least in more modern D&D, was written by Vecna. But again, just some really fantastic artwork here. Some really cool information on some of the different like key locations or moments from that setting. We've got, of course, the Tomb of Horrors, which I think is one of the worst examples of adventure design out there. But, it is a big part of D&D's lore. There's Tomb of Annihilation cover. Again, some more stuff there. You got like the False Acererak treasure room there. Which was supposed to be like the sort of like the gotcha for the adventure, because if they fought this fake Acererak and defeated him, they got this treasure that looked really cool, but when they left, and the DM was supposed to be like, well, what'd you think of the module? What'd you think of the adventure? To really sell the idea that it was over. But then when they leave, all that stuff that they got basically turns to like worthless garbage. So it's interesting. It's an interesting comp, but again, I don't like the Tomb. I don't think the Tomb of Horrors, I would never want to run it. I don't like the idea of something that's just outwardly hostile. And the original Tomb of Horrors was basically meant to punish the players because a lot of the stuff was like not something that the characters could really do anything with in game. It was just a situation where if the player says they checks the wrong thing, for example, they can be teleported back to the entrance of the dungeon with all their gear missing, or they can just be instantly killed. And I don't know. It's. I did a video years ago about the difference between design philosophies for, because there's like two really classic D&D modules that I always heard of a lot when I was really first getting into D&D. One of them was Tomb of Horrors and the other was Keep on the Borderlands. And Keep on the Borderlands is an example of some fantastic adventure design, some of the best ever, done. And, I mean, not the best ever done, but some really great adventure design. And then you had the Tomb of Horrors, which I think is one of the worst examples of adventure design there. But again, I guess that's my opinion. We got the Apocalypse there, Ancient Apocalypse. I think they know kind of what they were going for there. But again, it's really cool to see a lot of this older artwork there. And again, you get a lot of information on the specific world. Now, this is the one that blew me away when it was in here, because for years, I've wanted to see an update to Mystara. And what I thought would be really cool, and if I were in charge, if I had any say at Wizards, this is what I would have done. Because with 5e, they have free basic rules. Even the 2024 version has a free set of basic rules that you can go on D&D Beyond and download. And I think what would have been really cool would be to give the players that are using these basic rules a free campaign setting in Mystara, because Mystara was the setting used by basic D&D back in the day. So if you got these free basic rules, it doesn't have to be this huge, 300-page thing, but you could just have a 32-page little gazetteer of the known world, and you could allude to things like the Hollow World or stuff like that, and even direct them to something like DM's Guild or Drive-Thru RPG, which are both different versions of the same company, where they can get PDFs or print-on-demand versions of some of these older books. But I was not expecting to see Mystara referenced in anything, because it kind of feels like it always falls between the cracks, because it wasn't part of the AD&D line, and I haven't really seen too many references to Mystara from Wizards in a very, very long time. So it's just incredible to see that they have that here. They even talk about the immortals, because there are no gods in the traditional sense in the world of Mystara. Instead, you have immortals that you can venerate there. Again, some really cool artwork here to go along with it. You've got the princes and principalities, so you got Karamikos. You've got the Galantry, which I think are the two that I have things for. But yeah, really, really cool stuff. Yeah, there is, I forget which location it is. I don't know, I can't remember if it's Galantry or not. But one of the locations in Mystara is a magocracy, and I think clerics are essentially outlawed there. So it's kind of cool to see stuff like that referenced. The flying ship, if you played the arcade games at all, like the Shadow over Mystara or Tower of Doom, then, I think it was Shadows of Mystara, you're in a airship that gets attacked. Could have been Tower of Doom, I can't remember now. It's been a while since I played them, but again, we got the Hollow World reference, which is really cool. Flying where all directions are up. Again, it's just so cool to see Mystara included there. That's the second edition AD&D artwork from the Player's Handbook, but it still kind of fits. You got Life in Mystara, so he, the lizard. And then we got Dragonlance. So not a ton of stuff on Mystara, but you know what? It's still cool to see it in there regardless. So here we have Dragonlance. Now, one of the things with the modern, there's a new Dragonlance novel that came out. They have updated the dragon designs so that they are consistent now across all the D&D brands. Some people really don't seem to like that idea. I mean, I think it was kind of neat that the dragons look different in the 3rd edition version, but I don't know. I don't have an issue with the artwork using the same dragons designs for the different campaign worlds, because I think dragons are iconic enough that, they can kind of stand on their own. And again, if you're not used to, the way that this was, if you're sort of a beginner, I'm not going to say it's going to throw you off all that much, but, there's sort of just this sense of normalcy between the different campaign settings. And again, because the campaign settings are all connected now, I think it makes more sense that the dragons would appear the same on all these different settings because they sort of come from the same source, as opposed to like how they are basically the same, but they had like the 3rd edition Dragonlance dragons looked like the AD&D ones, so it didn't really change that much from like 2nd edition. But anyway, it doesn't bother me, I guess is what I'll say. I kind of like the consistency across, because I mean you've already got a few things that are changed, like Tiamat is now Takesis and Bahamut is now Paladine, and but they're the same basic creatures, just different names. So again, some cool artwork here. I can't remember if that's Verminard or not, but again, I do like the Dragonlance artwork. There's Takesis there, so again, that's like the AD&D style there. That looks really, really cool. I think that's from I can't remember if that's from the 5e one or not. It's been a while since I looked through that. The Draconians, a big part of the D&D, and I kind of like the fact, again, that the more modern ones have their designs look much closer to the metallic dragon, because the Draconians were the result of, I guess, like magical experimentation that was done on metallic dragon eggs. So I kind of like the fact that they actually look like, that looks like the copper dragon, for example. So I kind of like that. I kind of like that change as well. And we got Lord Soth there again. So we got the more modern look of Tiamat or Takesis. And again, we got Lord Soth on his Death Dragon, I think it's called. Some really cool, there's just some really cool artwork in these. You got Raceland. And then we got the Forgotten Realms. So we got Dritz there. Although I don't think any of the other characters are iconic. Man, I still don't like what they did with the halfling artwork in the original 5th edition D&D. They made them look less nightmarish in the 2024 version. But we got Dritz again there attacking. Oh god, what was the name of the red dragon? The one that he blinded with the crystal shard, I think it was. I hate that I can't remember that now. That's Icing Death, the dragon, where he got the scimitar that he, named after the dragon that he slew to get it. Man, I hate that I can't remember that dragon's name now. It reappeared in one of the later books there as well, with I think with like Jarlaxle and was it Jarlaxle and Artemis, or was that? It was also part of like the transition series, which was transitioning the timeline from 3rd to 4th. We got the Empire of Nethril. One of the things that I loved in 4E was that they brought the Netherese Empire back, and the Anarok Desert was now lush vegetation again. And they had this mageocracy that was back that you could have compete with something like Thay, for example. And with 5e, they kind of undid a lot of that stuff, which, again, I like the 4e Forgotten Realms. I like the changes. I like the fact that it was removed enough from the novels that, I had a player before who, if I incorporated any elements into my campaigns that were based off of events from novels, if I did anything even the slightest bit different, because I never read the novels, he would go into great detail as to how I was wrong in the way that I, portrayed the events. So moving it 100 years in the future and turning all that into kind of almost like folklore, I'm totally cool with. You got the Cities of the Sword Coast again. I do hope that with the new D&D, they really move away from just focusing everything on the Sword Coast, because there would be no reason to live there if every other week there's an apocalyptic event that takes place. But I mean, there are some cool locations, obviously Baldur's Gate and Luskan, Waterdeep, Neverwinter. There's Waterdeep, and I probably mentioned Undermountain, which is there. We got Xanathar. And again, some more really cool artwork there. I love the Beholder designs. I think this was the alternate cover. Was that the alternate cover for Xanathar's Guide? I don't have it, so I can't remember. But again, just some really cool artwork there. I don't know if that's supposed to be Xanathar or not. I don't think it is. We got Zaz Tam and the Red Wizards. Of course, we've got Eberron, which, it was one of those settings that their marketing was really poor on, but was actually a really great campaign world. And it also has a completely different, cosmology as well. So, again, like with the 4E one, they had the Astral Sea and the Elemental Chaos, but that was for the world that they created for 4th edition. Eberron had their own stuff as well, right? Had their own unique takes on the different planes. So I think it's cool to introduce new worlds, new versions where things are just a little bit different. And I know that is kind of at odds with what I said about the Dragonlance dragons, but I guess I'm a little bit of a hypocrite. I don't know. The Warforged. Now the Warforged were all over the marketing for Eberron before it released. And it was this weird thing that Wizard still kind of does, although they have gotten better at, where they focus on the most alienating aspects of with 3rd to 3.5. They focused on a lot of the changes that they made that really didn't feel necessary versus the ones that made the game better. And with Eberron, they focused a lot on the magical vehicles and the Warforged. And it just, for me, I didn't really care for it because it felt like a campaign world that I wasn't interested in. Until I finally got the Races of Eberron book, which was really well written. It's okay, well, they actually really incorporate these into the world well and in a manner that is not necessarily as forward and prevalent as their marketing made it feel. So anyway, cool stuff though. I do like the Eberron setting. We got some cool artworks there. We got the legacy of the 3 dragons there of Eberron. Was it Sibris and Kyber? Forming the world, the caverns beneath the world, or inside the world, and then the space around it there. And the dragon marks. The Dreamy Dark. I wonder if they have a thing on the Mournland. They must, right? There's Draconic Prophecy. Oh, that looks like the Mournland, but the Dalkir. Oh, maybe there's not a lot about the. Maybe there's not a lot about the Mournlands there. It's interesting. So we got the inner and parallel planes. So the elemental planes. So the parallel planes would be the Feywild and the Shadowfell. So again, we're just going to go through this a little bit more quickly here. We got the astral plane there with the Githyanki, and then I'm sure they've got. Okay, well, maybe not. The Feywild. So again, I do like the Feywild as kind of a setting there. The allure of magic and folk, it's basically where folklore comes from, sort of. Little Spacer Beast kitten. It's super adorable. There we got Kellic, the evil wizard. Back when the good-evil axis of alignment wasn't in the game. Part of the LJN toy line there, and the League of Malevolence. So the Archfey. We should have the Shadowfell coming up here. And some really cool artwork in this. Every bard has her day. Here's the Shadowfell. So one of my favorite 4E things that I own is the Shadowfell box set. And I've tried making videos for it over the years, and I just never seem to be able to talk about the stuff the way that I really want to. But what's cool about the Shadowfell, so originally the Plane of Shadow was a negative image of the Primaterial world. So everything was basically the same, but for example, in the Baldur's Gate video game, Baldur's Gate 2, or Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 2, I should say, you go up this structure called the Onyx Tower, where the floors and the walls are all this black obsidian. And then when you enter the Shadowfell, it's white. And then so it's just sort of the inverted color scheme. Like if you, I know I'm old, but if you had a roll of film, right, you had the negatives. So that's kind of what the Shadowfell, or the plane of shadow was. The Shadowfell is a dark, twisted version of the material world. So you've got, like, if you're in a city in the material plane and you cross over into the Shadowfell, you are in a dark and twisted version of that. So, like, the big example is the city of Neverwinter in the Forgotten Realms has a place called Evernight, which is the Shadowfell version. And instead of having this like stream running through, or the river running through the town or the city, instead you have this like flow of lava coming from their volcano. And like the forests would be devoid of like greenery, so they'd just be these sort of twisted, gnarled branches. The tree trunks would almost look like they had faces, and it was just this really sort of like creepy environment that the longer you spend there, the more your resolve, the more your mental well-being is basically, drained and damaged. And you can gain effects, or at least the fourth edition one, you can gain effects that could give you penalties based on how long you were there. So if you like slept in the Shadowfell, when you woke up in the morning, you'd have to make some sort of roll, and if you failed, then you could gain this sort of like this disorder that you'd have at least for the day. So I always thought it was really cool. I really like the concept of, again, sort of like the twisted, dark version here. I think they've incorporated the Ravenloft setting into the Shadowfell, but it's like their own sort of self-contained demi-planes within it. But yeah, there's some really cool stuff with the Shadowfell there. They're focusing a lot on the Curse of Strahd art, but there was some really great artwork from it from like the 4E days. So I guess they're focusing mainly on Ravenloft, which maybe they should call this Ravenloft instead of the Shadowfell section, but that seems to be what they're focusing on. Then we got Spelljammer. So if you want to pilot ships in space, and I mean, there's definitely some cool stuff in there. I'm not going to pretend that there's not. Like, there's the Illithid Nautiloid. But I don't know. The Spelljammer was never really my thing back in the day. And I feel like some people treated it like it was bigger than it really was when the 5e version came out. But, I don't have a problem with the 5e version. It gives you the basics that you need for the spelljamming itself, and then the rest is kind of yours to create. I mean, it's space, right? You can put anything in there that you want. So, some cool Mind Flare artwork there. Spelljamming for Justice. There's the GIF, the old hippo person with a blunderbuss. There's Minsk with Boo. The 9 Hells. If you've never read the 3rd edition, or 3.5 book, Tyrants of the 9 Hells, the book itself is really cool, but the introductory little chapter, which is only a couple pages long, but it's basically the story of how the 9 Hells were created, and just how, like, scheming and, like, how willing to play the long game Asmodeus is. And it was like, if you don't read anything else, if you can track down that like origin story, it's so good. Just the ending there is just so good. So here we got, I think this is the Avernus there, the first layer. Nessus. Is Nessus the one? No. Okay. Oh, Nessus is the one that Asmodeus is in. What's the level of... Oh, Stygia. That's the one with the Levistus, I think. The frozen archfiend. Surprising lack of Asmodeus artwork in here so far. You got Zerael. There's Asmodeus. I know that Zerael, is probably a more interesting character, but I kind of liked Bel, the Pit Fiend. being the Lord of Avernus. The Lure of Power. Hell in a Cell. Yeah, well, for the wrestling fans out there. Then we've got the Infinite Layers of the Abyss, which aren't really infinite. I think there's 666 of them. But what would be cool is if they actually, which I doubt they would, but it'd be really cool if they mentioned Ocapitus. We got some old school artwork there that's not censored. I hope that doesn't cause an issue with revenue. But yeah, in the Shackle City Adventure Path, one of the players has the potential to become the ruler of Ocapitus, which was Adamarcus's layer of the night of the abyss, and he was a fallen Planetar or Solar. Anyway, he was like a high-ranking angelic warrior who basically became obsessed with the war against demons and all that, and actually ended up leading an incursion into Celestia, into heaven, when he felt like he wasn't getting the support that he needed. So basically he turned on them. And the only way to defeat him was to actually cast out the parts of Celestia that he had claimed or that he had a foothold in. So you actually had this layer of the Abyss, which has chunks of Celestia or heaven in it. And what was cool about it is that it was a layer that demons tried to avoid because they felt it was haunted. Because it had like aspects of Celestia or heaven in there. So I thought it was a really, really cool plane, really, really cool level of the Abyss there. And it'd be kind of neat to see it, just even casually mentioned again. Here we have Sigil with the Lady of Pain, which is sort of the central hub there, which they had the Radiant Citadel as well, like that book. And, that book was fine. It's a collection of, like, short adventures, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I always find it weird when you're creating all these central locations that connect to all these other campaign settings when Sigil already does that. So, I don't know. I felt that Sigil should have been the focus rather than the Radiant Citadel. Face the Sigil, which is a book that I own, actually. And, of course, you have to have your Modrons. I actually have the mini of that guy. I'm not a fan of the Modrons, to be honest. It feels like, you kind of got lazy with the creature design. It's like, hey, let's just have, geometric shapes. But still cool, nonetheless. Traveling the Outer Plane. So there you got, I think, the Infinite Staircase. The March of the Modrons. City Sigil of Doors, the Outer Planes, and the Far Realms. So the Far Realm stuff is fantastic. You might hear a garbage truck outside because they just showed up. But yes, just some really cool stuff. The Far Realm is awesome. I really wish they'd sort of go more into detail about it. But again, some great artwork there. That was from a Dungeon Magazine cover. And there you go, the epilogue. Art credits about the authors and contributors. Again, lots of art credits there, so really, really cool stuff. And that is the book of Worlds and Realms. So again, I didn't really go into the articles, I just kind of focused more on like the artwork stuff, but this is a really awesome book. And, it doesn't give you, like, everything that you need, but, like, this is a really cool, like, almost try it before you buy it kind of thing. Because what it does is it introduces a whole lot of different campaign worlds and gives you their basic flavor, their basic tone, some key events, some key locations from them. And if they interest you, then, well, they might be able to direct you to the actual setting books. And I do hope that just traditional campaign setting books make more of a comeback in the new 5th edition or the 2024 5th edition. They had some for the 2014 version, like they had the Eberron setting, they had Wildmount, and they had some of the Magic the Gathering ones, which were all really good books. But I, would like to just see the sort of the classic settings, come back and just kind of get that hardcover book treatment. Or, I mean, if it's not too much to hope for, maybe some box sets, because I'm a sucker for those. But yeah, you get an idea of these different locations, and I think that's a really cool thing. And I think this would make a really great gift for, well, anyone really that's into D&D. But if you got somebody that's just sort of getting into it, this gives you all kinds of lore that you can throw in, or that they can sort of look at and learn from, and maybe sort of spark that interest and drive them to get deeper and deeper into the hobby. So I think this is a really cool book. I think in general, these types of releases, which are more just like, a celebration of like the D&D's, past, or the worlds, or key events and stuff like that. I think these are great additions to anybody's D&D collection. And I recommend, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, if you want to, learn a little bit more about some of the worlds, then this is a great way to do that. It's a great way to dip your toes into the pool, so to speak. And again, I was blown away by the fact that they actually included Mystara. So, fingers crossed that maybe 2025 or sometime in the next little bit, we might get an updated Mystara setting. I think that would be amazing. So anyway, let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite campaign world, campaign setting, official? Like, I know a lot of people's just going to be their homebrew world, and I get that. But from the ones that are like the official settings, which is your favorite of those? Mine is probably Eberron. I just love the amount of different things, different game styles, different campaign types that you can play in that world without having to modify anything. So I think that's a really, really handy thing to have. So I like that setting quite a lot for that. But I think Forgotten Realms and Mystara probably tied, or like very close second and third. So awesome stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care.